This close one.
We all go a little mad.
Get you.
You are under darkness.
Here's Johnny.
It's all for you.
Hi, how are you guys today?
Oh, we're doing good.
Yeah,
How are you?
yeah, doing really good.
Pretty good. Well, first off, my name's Yutaka. I'm with the Horror Hour. And I mean, first off, when I read the press release, I just have to also say how much it means to me as an Asian American, as I'm sure you're probably hearing a bunch today, but the fact that you made a project with an Asian American lead. So I'd like to know the story behind the thought process.
Yeah, like for us, I mean, just being in this industry and being, Asian American, it, it's been difficult, and so for us, we're like, if it's that hard on us as directors and on, actors and actresses, then the only way to change this industry is to really just, trust your gut and go make that change, than to wait on it.
Yeah, I think it's incumbent upon us to be that change, than to just point the fingers at what's wrong with the industry, and hopefully someone will come and do it. If you can do it, and you have the trust your guts, trust your instincts, and just go for broke. Yeah.
And then we were throughout the few years before this film was made, we had been pitching it based on the script, and every time somebody would come on board, a studio company, they would say, hey, we want to make the movie, we like the story, the script, who do you guys see as, the lead? And the moment we said, oh, we want Asian American actors, that was when they said, oh, you know what, we are not going to do it. Or is there any way you guys can reconsider and, make the leading character white, and maybe make, the supporting actor or actress, Asian. And for us, we always said no. We would rather walk away from the money, from the financing, and just say, hey, we're going to hold on to this. If we don't trust in ourselves, then who is going to actually, champion us, and what we stand for. And so for us, it was, just several years of just,
but we're kind of glad that happened, because it gave us a lot of years to actually work the script and rework the script and rework the script. And we went and did it on a completely shoestring of a budget. And we're so glad that the process happened this way, because it really helped us, to be as creative as we can. Like when you're so limited, I think that's when you tend to be the most creative in everything that you do. And so it was such a delight to be able to bring so many, different folks from all walks of life to join us on this journey to creating this piece of work. I mean, working with Michelle and Ken has been, such a wonderful blessing. And I mean, those two are so talented, and we, like for us, looking into the future, we want to continue, hopefully making horror films too, and hopefully, championing, Asian Americans, both, on the screen and behind the screen. We had oh, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say that makes my heart swell. I mean, it's I am, gosh, I grew up in the 80s and 90s, and just, I always wanted to see myself represented growing up on screen. And usually, yes, we were the side character, or well, honestly, there's many great horror films, but let's be honest, when I look back during that era, it was a lot of, predominantly white cast. Nothing, I mean, I guess wrong with that in a sense, but I never saw me. So you guys making this, and I'm so glad you held out and made this project, because you guys got me. Well, one, you scared me. Two, you got me freaking emotional. And three, you put Michelle through hell.
Yeah, we did. Yeah.
Yeah, we dragged her through hell.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This should have been called Drag Me to Hell 2.
Yeah.
I mean, I think as filmmakers, I think that's great to back your cause. And I think it's sad it's 2022, and we're just now seeing this, because I mean, even last year, I would say we had a lot of Asian-led projects. dominate the box office, which was great to see. But I am truly happy that you guys made a horror film with Asian American leads. And I'm also happy that you guys told this tale, and I'd like to know how it came about to creating this story.
Yeah, the
um,
story comes from a very, personal place,
Yeah.
and a lot of it's inspired by, what our mother went through. We actually have like a third brother, and he passed away after, shortly after birth. And my mom took years to just sort of get over his passing, and
we actually didn't know we had a third brother up until one day where we were both kids, very, very young, and we found this Polaroid picture of this baby in my mom's dresser, and we asked them like who is this? And they told us then, but it was almost like never talked about, and it wasn't.
It's almost like it's almost expected like in many Asian families, you don't talk about grief, you don't talk about a lot of these things, right?
Yeah.
And so that's what, and so for us, we wrote from that place,
Yeah.
So a lot of what Michelle embodies in her character is sort of
Something
what our family as a whole, my mother, us, our dad,
I mean,
what we sort of went through all those years. And we just sort of like, we were able to talk about it just, within, I think, the last 3 years.
yeah. I mean,
3-4 years, maybe 5 years at most, but we finally talked about it. And that's crazy, right?
Not only that, but I mean, his name is Tom, and he was only a year younger than me, and I'm turning 38 this year.
And I'm turning 40.
And so when I remember just a few years ago, like 3 years ago, we finally, our whole family, and for the first time seeing my parents go to his gravestone, like after like 30 plus years, to finally confront it and finally let this grief, this burden, just, be lifted off of our shoulders, especially from our mother. What you also find in the movie is, a lot of times Michelle is actually wearing the clothes from our mom that she had during this time. So like my mom likes to hoard everything. So we literally went through her closet and like got all like her dresses, her shirts, her blouses, whatever it was that she had from like the 80s and 90s, and it fit Michelle perfectly. So we brought it to set, and yeah, a lot of what you see her wearing is our clothes straight out of our mom's closet. Yeah.
You guys are gonna make me tear up over this. I mean, wow. I'm trying to think of where to go to next, but
sorry for that, we
went on a deep end right there.
this is great. I mean, I truly felt like watching this, I loved seeing the story unfold because there were definitely a couple of twists, but I think one of the biggest things about this is how to process grief. And I think you just answered where that came from, because that to me felt like, wow. And as you had mentioned with Asian families, yeah, we don't talk about that. Recently, with COVID, and I had my grandparents pass, and my dad was just like, oh, it was a simple text. I go, but that's kind of that's how it is. So it's very, wow, impressive that this was able to be told. I guess my next question then, I want to kind of break down, actually, there's a scene that is just so powerful. And it's really when Michelle is screaming in the car and just finally lets go. I want to ask like what that was on set, because that to me, I was kind of like hooting and hollering. I'm like, it's about time. Yes.
Yeah, we shot that. That was the final scene before we took a small break because we shot through the 4th of July weekend.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was the shot right before we were going to break for that whole week actually. Mm-hmm. And it was, we told Michelle like, this is the moment, before before making that decision to confronting your demons, because as hard as you've tried all these years to bottle it, it's not working now. And this is the moment where you just have to let go and really express how you feel. And I remember she just went berserk. I didn't think she was going to be like. I think she hit the steering wheel so hard that
like I think her hands or her wrists were bruised for like
yeah
several days.
Yeah, I think
Goodness.
she may have gone to the hospital for that too.
Yeah,
because
But
that
I
was
mean,
a
she
very
was
hard
going
steering
to.
wheel, and that was all her. You know, like we gave her the
Yeah.
context, and she went berserk. And
I mean, it's the in the story, it's almost like it's the moment where she has failed at everything, right? That she has been trying to uphold. But yet, though, for the audience, it's the moment where she is finally seeing a glimpse of victory.
yeah,
And so it's an interesting pivotal moment for her character, and for us, writing that scene, we knew that was going to be. We needed someone like Michelle to really perform that moment. And she brought her A game, and she was fantastic.
yeah. And going back to like being Asian American, and just growing up, in a culture where maybe a lot of things are suppressed. You're not you don't like express so much. I think that's a moment where she finally breaks out of that eggshell, and it's just like I don't give a damn anymore.
And I think what's interesting with this scene and just the movie in general is that like if you really look at it, we don't actually really look at or explore anything overtly Asian American, right, or Asian. You could really remove the couple and put in another couple that's not Asian, and the film will still work. But I think what's really Asian American about this is just that the quiet refusal to talk about these things. And so I think for us, we wanted that to work subconsciously in the film.
It did. I mean, it really did. And her performance was outstanding. I've been following her work for quite some time. I'm a big fan of the actress. So that was the other part when I saw that in the press release. I'm like, I need to see this. I need to see it now. And like I said, you guys wrecked me over this because I watched it several times just to make sure. I was like, okay, well, and so I guess I'd also like to start then. One of the other questions I had is the opening was just so jarring. Whose thought was just to go straight into it with something like that?
Well, I think for us, like we knew we wanted to start the film off with something very
emotional and hard,
shocking, because we knew that this may be a slow burn of a film.
So as filmmakers, we wanted within the first 5 minutes, you got to pull your audience in, and then you could take them for a slower ride afterwards. And so I think for us, that's what we.
Yeah, and maybe it's just it's the fact that folks are streaming now, and audiences can play control over which parts they can watch and when to swipe up or left or whatever. It's almost like you have to be very surgical with how you create movies now. And so for us, I think starting off the movie, very, very emotional, very, very shocking is I think it's a good way to keep audiences wanting to see, okay, why this? Why is she like this? Why did she try to do this in the beginning? Let's try to find out. Yeah.
And the thing is that we wanted to start Michelle's character from the lowest place possible, because of the story is about her journey moving towards the light. And so for us, how do we start her from hell? And make her climb, make her work for it, And so that's where that was why we chose that as the beginning, because we had different beginnings actually.
We did,
and that was the one that we settled on.
Yeah.
So
I mean, it hooked me. For my final question, then, just I know what I took out of this film, but what do you hope the audience takes away from this film?
I guess it depends on which audience we're talking
to.
The general audience, we hope that the film is able to give them a moving dramatic story that is presented as a horror film, and that they don't think about the horror aspects of it as what is making the film work, but really the emotional core of the story itself.
And I think for our Asian American audience, that for me, I think I can speak for the both of us. We just want folks to see hey, there are, other Asian American stories that could be told. I mean, it's great that we have our our Minaris and our farewells, and those are fantastic films.
Shang-Chi,
With
Minari.
Shang-Chi's, but like within the genre of horror thriller, like
I mean, when was the last time you saw an Asian American horror led film? Not
I
Asian
honestly
film,
tried
right?
to think of one. I couldn't, and
There's
it
none,
breaks
yeah.
me a little.
Yeah.
So that's why it was very important for me, one, to want to see this, want to be able to speak with you and just champion this, because I think it's a great film. And again, I hate watching films that make me tear up, but you guys did a number on me, and then just hearing about it is also, I'm gonna have to take a moment. But I really just want to say thank you again for the time to get to speak with you, the pleasure to watch your film, and I just hope you guys have a good rest of your day.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Same to you too. Thank you so much.
Hi, how are you today?
I'm good. I'm good. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for taking the time to talk with me. I've watched this movie a couple times now, and a couple things. One, it terrifies me. Two, it emotionally gutted me. And the last part would be, as an Asian American, I love that the Vang brothers are doing this, and I love that you were cast in this. And so I'd like to know how you feel about, I believe this is your first lead in a horror film. How
Yes.
was that?
Yeah, it's great because, well, ironically, I can't watch horror films. My imagination gets too spun, into that world. And so when I come home at night, all of a sudden I'm in my reality, which is that I'm terrified. So this one struck me because I did really appreciate the Vang brothers' journey, and I really wanted to support them. But I thought the heart of the story is about grief and family loss, and that affects me. And I was thinking to myself, hopefully I can get through these interviews without having to talk about her loss, because I'm too sensitive to the subject matter. But losing a child for a parent is so devastating, and that's, for me, I was interested in that complexity.
I mean, your character, and I asked them, I was like, they put you through the ringer in this one. Claire goes through so much. And I think that, I think in obviously, Asian culture, or at least just for mine as well, we don't talk about grief enough, and we don't open up and ask for help. And so I'm curious then, just in portraying this role, did you take anything away from that and learning from your character?
Yeah, I thought that with the way I try to approach the work when it becomes available, and for me, having a full role like this allows me to really dive deeply. That for me, the film was a ritual of how does one get past emotional limbo of loss, and how do you go through that journey and come out the other side, having been changed by it. So that was my big question overall, and the obstacle of not being able to let go, especially it's her son.
Hmm.
That for me is, having experienced the loss of my father during that time. It had been fairly recent. That was a question I was having. So learning what the answer to that question was part of the performance, I think.
It felt raw and real. I mean, it was. I certainly don't tear up that much at films in general, but this one certainly did get to me, because I think, especially, your character. It's also, I think, a journey of mental health as well, and I think, the past couple of years we've all been on that, and so it was. Um, it like the opening was very just sudden, but I would love to know, my favorite scene though is when you're in the car and you just let go, how that scene was for you.
Well, I did hurt my hand in that scene. Got to, I think, especially having come out of the pandemic, where hopefully we're coming out of it now.
Hmm.
What I was tapping into, and it was basically this movie started to open that up for me, was the intersectionality of grief and rage. And I thought that moment that you just described was that moment, that there is so much rage and anger underneath loss. And to be able to express it in that moment, I thought is, that's an actor's dream, to be able to tap into such deep emotions. And I think in a way, this film gave me permission to feel all the things as an Asian American that I'm not given permission to feel in our culture, because we have
Yeah.
to be so together, and we have to overcome our obstacles, and oftentimes we're not given permission to even accept that they are real obstacles. So I think a lot of that was coming into play for that moment.
That gonna make me tear up. That really speaks just a lot. Yes. Just in the past couple of years, I completely understand that. Um, and I think another great thing about this film, though, is just seeing how Claire, or, you know, she's very closed off. And I do enjoy seeing the journey with Peter trying to, break down those barriers and reform that relationship. And how is that with just with Ken and those scenes?
Yeah, well, poor Ken.
Yeah.
He's married to an intense woman. And well, I think the way I experienced it was Ken was very cut off to his own grief, in that he's trying to move on. And maybe he has moved on, but I really doubted the depth of his ability to move on.
Mhm.
Maybe in that moment he's doing it. Um, I mean, I guess I can't really speak to how he perceived his character, but my interpretation was that he wasn't connected to what he was really feeling, and that he was having his own version of grief was to put on a mask and a facade that everything was okay.
Well, and I think that kind of speaks to the Asian culture, because we're not allowed really to show that emotion. I remember when my grandfather passed, and my dad had to keep a very stoic, attitude and face, and couldn't show that I know he was experiencing, loss, but that's just part of our culture. And so I really enjoyed this film kind of opening up and showing that, because it is a struggle um, for
Yeah.
us.
Yeah, I really felt the film was a metaphor for those combined experiences, that she is not allowed, through her own, cultural experience, not allowed to express herself, and now she's in a private experience that doesn't allow her to express herself, which is where her superpower comes in, right?
Right. Well, and that actually leads into another question. Sometimes we may be given gifts and we're just not sure how to use them. So I would be curious, if you were given a superpower, how would you utilize? Because this technically is a superpower. She didn't realize it at first, but I
Right.
think in the end.
Yeah, I think that the interesting aspect of her ability to tap into the paranormal is a metaphor for our own strengths, which are also weaknesses, right?
Hmm.
Is that she feels too much, really, when you think about it in terms of her psychic connection. She can feel too much, she can see too much, and that becomes so terrifying for her. But once she learns to use it and embrace it, which is where her journey ends, but also then begins. If we have I know the Vangs were like, this is the sequel for her becoming psychic superhero, which I thought was a great, interesting premise. Um, that for me, that journey to how she embraces that cognition of, oh my gosh, my weakness is now my strength. And I think that's true for all of us.
Yeah, and I would be down to see a sequel, honestly. I can't champion them enough for just giving you this role, and for you to really just, you seem like you absorbed it and just really were putting on one of my favorite performances. And I've been following you since, I would say, when Saving Face came out. That, as an Asian American, as a queer Asian American, seeing that, I don't often get to see myself represented on screen. And so it's just been very happy to see your career as it's continued. And then just now to see you in a horror film as a horror buff, it's just one of my favorite things.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. That's great. Yeah, I feel like the change has been very slow, but I do
Yes.
feel like it's it feels more solid. And I spent a big part of my career talking about change, but never really feeling that the ground was sturdy. I
Hmm.
do feel that the needle has changed, and I feel like there's now enough creatives and filmmakers and people like you who are helping that media get translated to the larger public to really say, check out the story. Because at the end of the day, you're the one who is saying you're on the platform and the
Oh
loudspeaker.
yeah.
Yeah.
And honestly, this past year, I would say just Asian filmmaking, Asians in general, and media has really, thankfully, been on the rise, even though sadly, there's also been a lot of just Asian American hate. And so it's nice to see that there's this positive aspect so we can, hopefully for change, make everything better. But I'm hoping we see something move further because there's just so much untapped talent out there. And I think there are stories that, I myself would love to hear, and I think others would enjoy to see.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. And I think the only way to keep forging ahead is by amassing our power. And I think that's a big part of the story is that she keeps finding her power in spite of it all. And, given how much, hate there has been directed towards us, I basically try and dig my heels in and try to overcome those apparent obstacles and, remind myself that this is the path we're on and to keep championing our community.
Just that just sorry. I have one
Are
final
we gonna be are
question.
we gonna be
I
crying?
am. I mean that it is so my final question would just be, what do you hope people get from this experience from viewing this film?
Well, what's so great about genre films is that hopefully you're entertained in the process of having some subconscious message, right? So you and I have been talking about the subconscious themes,
Hmm.
API. Those are things that are within our experience that we're bringing to the table. The film obviously isn't just about that.
Correct.
But it's such a part of the narrative, the fact that I was cast in it, that I bring that to the storyline without having to comment on it.
Hmm.
But the entertaining part of the film is that it's a horror, and I think the Vangs delivered on that.
Yes, they did.
And my job was to just be in the character. They're the ones that made all this spookiness happen. I still can't watch horror films though.
Well, I just, again, I want to say thank you for taking the time to speak with me. And again, it's just been an honor, and I wish you the best of your day.
Thank you so much, and thanks for being such a supporter and a fan. I really appreciate that.
Thank you.
Nice to meet you.
You have been listening to the Horror Hour. See you next time.